a lot of these patterns you learned like 0 to 2.
Yeah. I think they say 0 to 6, like last trimester to about 6 years old is the bulk of the subconscious programming, which is 95% of your operating system today.
Yeah. And they have there's this phenomenon in psychology called ghosts in the nursery, which mean, and I'll give you an explanation. So let's say we're looking at 18-month-old Mel Robbins. An 18-month-old Mel Robbins is sitting on the kitchen floor. And I've got the Tupperware drawer open, and 18-month-old Mel Robbins is lost because I'm following my soul and I am playing with the Tupperware and I got this stuff all over and I've made a big mess and I'm just like happy as a little clam. And then all of a sudden around the corner, like my mom comes and she's walking around the corner, doesn't see me and slips and like, and just reacts. What happens in my nervous system is that her frustration with the mess and the blow up and the fact that I have a disruption in my nervous system because I'm startled, I literally sear her behavior with my emotional reaction.
Sure.
So frustration gets encoded in me. I don't even remember it. I'm 18 months old.
Yeah.
Frustration is always this emotional feeling in my body. And now I'm just literally copying the behavior I saw in the adults.
You're kind of a passenger at that point in time. It's almost autopilot.
Correct. And so because emotions rise up before your thoughts take hold.
Yeah.
It's super important to pay attention to your body. Is it a twitch in the stomach? Is it a clench in the, my husband says that when he feels kind of his pattern of withdrawing kick in, he first feels like his chest tighten.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he feels. That's how he knows one of those patterns from his past in his subconscious that he doesn't want as an adult is about to spin. Mm-hmm. And so if he can catch it here, he can say, oh, here it goes. I'm about to withdraw. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to choose something different. Mm-hmm. And so that's been wildly helpful. And it allowed me to go, oh, I get it. This is why. It's not that I'm a moron. It's that I'm talking about the behavior I want to change with one part of my brain, but the behavior itself is somewhere else. So I got to fight it in the region that it's in. And it's also really important. You can't just catch it. You can't just interrupt it. You must replace it with a new pattern of behavior because patterns repeat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You have to reprogram yourself. A question I have too, because this is something I use as an indicator. I'll use my own personal example. It's, if somebody is to reflect on you when he should have looked up something simple and obvious, just Google it, whatever. For me, it's like I judge lazy people. So I'm like, God, like really, just like you're complaining about that. You haven't done anything, or you're just sitting around. Don't you want to do something? And so I realized too that yes, of course, there's part of my childhood programming. I wasn't allowed to do those things. And so therefore in my adulthood, I don't do those things, meaning like I can't be lazy. It's hard for me to be lazy. I don't know how to be lazy. It's like programmed in me. And so another indicator that I use is like what I judge, I deny on some level. And so I bet that you're the kind of person that would never ask a stupid question. You'd Google it first. You'd do your homework. You'd do your research. And then if you couldn't figure it out, you'd, present it and be like, I did everything. I couldn't find it. Do you know, you wouldn't just go, hey, what's the weather tomorrow? You'd be like, you would have looked, right?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. It's interesting. It makes me wonder, given that it was sort of like just drilled into your head, work, 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 work. Do you find it really difficult to even like relax on a vacation?
I think that in the past, my vacations were like, it took a couple days to kind of get to down regulate enough to enjoy it, which is why I would never take less than 5-day vacations, because by the time I came down for the 3 days, I was already thinking I only had 2 left. So like at least 7 gave me like a couple to come down. I'm like, oh man, I got so many days left. And then you have a couple good days. And then there's still the ramp up of knowing you need to get going again. I'm better now. But I would say that, it took a long time to do something simple, like just sit on the couch and watch TV. I would always think I'd have to be doing something, maybe even just like, is it a fun show? Am I being entertaining? Am I asking good questions? Is it like, there had to be a little added layer to it. So I'd say that watching TV and just resting and letting that be enough and be in silence, especially if somebody's there, is like something that took a little while for me to be able to do comfortably.
Well, one of the things that I've learned recently about myself is that, because the lazy word caught my attention.
Mm.
And what I've unpacked for myself is that I am always doing something, because like so many people, I got the most positive attention when I was achieving. And so I married achievement with being worthy of love. And I know that I know that I never slowed down, and I was constantly on to the next thing, because if I wasn't up to something that was worth talking about, it must have meant that I wasn't worth loving either.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the doing and the achieving that I anchored my worth. And it's only, again, recently that I've really been able to see that and pull it apart and realize that, the things that I do have to be separate from whether or not I view myself as worthy or lovable or likable. That as a person, based on who I am and just my existence alone, you got to anchor it there and let the things that you're doing just be additive to you enjoying your life.
How did you figure it out?
It was the high five habit, honestly. Like I didn't figure it out till I was 52 years old, and it was holy shit. I cannot believe for how long I have tortured myself. I have just drilled myself. You asked at the very beginning if, what my thoughts are on us needing seasons. And, I live in a 4-season climate. I love the change of seasons. And one of the most important things about winter is that when you think about what winter is for, it's a period where everything falls off the trees, and all that stuff that dies and falls to the ground becomes what nourishes and feeds the things that are going to grow in the spring. And without the winter, and without the freeze, and without the dying off of the growth from last year, you wouldn't have the new growth. And so I deeply believe not only in seasons where you need to rest, and seasons where things need to die and fall off, and seasons where things need to, be reborn or to grow again anew, but I think that you can start a new one anytime you decide to. And that's also a really amazing aspect of kind of finally waking up and realizing you're in control of a lot more than you realize that you are. You can choose what you think about. It's not easy.
Yeah.
The process is simple, but it's not easy because you're fighting against patterns. But you can make a decision to change your life. You can make a decision to change what you value. You can make a decision to change who you hang out with. You can make a decision to change what you do for a living. Yeah. These are all things within your control. They don't come from wishing about them. Yeah. They're going to come from work.
Yeah. It's kind of that day one or one day kind of thing. And I've thought about this because I know you talk about this, and I love the attitude of like, just make the decision, count to 5, the 5-second rule, and just do it. Right. Which is such a great practice. But I was thinking about that, and I also do think that there's some meat to the fact that there's stuff that leads up to going, I can't take it anymore. I'm making a change. you have an epiphany, something hits hard enough, you're over it, like you just hit a breaking point, and something does change in a moment. It always changes in a moment, and it's up to you to get to that moment. So what can we do to get to that moment with routines, practices, disciplines? How do we get there? Because there's got to be there's always something that leads up to it.
Well, one thing that I've learned in life is that your breakdowns are just going to keep getting bigger until you wake the fuck up and get the lesson that the universe is sending. I mean, period. It took me a long time to see that I had a very painful pattern of being drawn to really big personality people who were really fun and edgy and just like, wow, like a shiny object. And then, when you're having fun with this kind of person and you're laughing all the time and they're really edgy and you start to realize, oh my God, they're actually kind of mean to people, or they lie, or they do this. Now all of a sudden I get scared because I don't know how to back away. And time and time and time and time, like I can go all the way back to friends in elementary school, to a babysitter that I once hired, to business associates back in the day, to like just there they are, there they are, there they are, there they are, there they are. And it wasn't until I had a massive issue happened with one of them that was super painful that made me go, holy shit, this is a pattern. This person has been showing up in your life since you were 9 years old, and you have not learned it. And now you have a very expensive and a very messy and a very awful situation to clean up with somebody that you couldn't draw boundaries with, period, because you were so worried about upsetting anybody or disappointing, like you're people pleasing. And so one thing to understand is your life is the greatest school you're ever going to attend, and it's always sending you messages.
Preach.
And I hope you're not as stubborn as I am, because it took me 41 years to see the lesson about toxic behavior that I was attracted to and toxic behavior that I engaged in my own people pleasing and inability to draw a line and like distance myself or end relationships that really didn't work. And I know they don't work because I get that feeling in my stomach. And then I see myself twisting myself in knots so as to not upset somebody who's basically crazy. Yeah. And I'm now like turning all around to not upset the person that is, I'm afraid of their reaction because they're not regulated in terms of their emotions. And so it took me a long time. And so I want you to understand, if you're listening to this, that if you're in a frustrating situation, I want you to ask yourself, number one, when in my life have I felt like this before? And who has made me feel like this? What situations have made me feel like this? And start listing them. And when you see one, you'll see another, and then another, and then another. And then there's that boss, and then there's a situation. And then you'll ask yourself, what is it that I'm doing that is having me show up in this situation again? And so I identified kind of the personality pattern that I was drawn to: fun, unpredictable, like life of the party, like kind of like just, woo, this feels fun and this feels on edge because I can't predict what's going to happen because this person's so entertaining, only to realize, holy shit, the same thing that drew me in is what's scaring me now and turning me into a massive people pleaser that makes me go crazy. And so if you can identify that, then you ask yourself, what is the lesson that life is trying to teach me? This person is being sent into my life to teach me a lesson. And for me, the lesson, again, back to your original question, why can't we listen to our instincts? How many of us have started dating or sleeping with somebody that we knew we shouldn't have been dating or sleeping with? And then we keep going back even though we knew that this is not a person that we should be with. And we like turn into somebody else, reckoning with and this person is being sent into your life for a reason, because you have a pattern that you need to break. And so when you can identify those three things, kind of when in my life have I felt this way before? What are the circumstances or people I've been around? What am I doing that I can see contributes to me getting into these situations?
Mm-hmm.
And what is this trying to teach me?
Mm-hmm. Oh.
And when you can look at it that way, that's how you unpack awful situations or confronting situations, and you look for the lesson in them. And if you don't figure out the freaking lessons you're meant to learn in this lifetime, you will just keep
coming
getting
back.
them. That's it. That is it. And so, that's one thing that I have learned recently. And then the other thing that I have learned, and, it's what I wrote about in the High Five Habit, is this notion that, there's only one person that you spend your whole life with, and it's yourself. And I had this epiphany in April of 2020 when I walked into the bathroom one morning. And, there's a lot of shit going on in my life. And it doesn't even matter what the details were, because I think everybody's had that experience where you're in a season of your life that's just overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And you don't feel capable or like you have one shred of energy left to face this shit. Mm. And I remember standing there in the bathroom, and I had this epiphany one morning where I realized, oh my God, there are always two human beings in the bathroom every morning. There's you, and there's a human being in the mirror. That's not your reflection. If you allow yourself to really look past the body in the mirror and through the eyes, you will see a human. You'll see your soul. And that woman that's staring back at you in the mirror, she is trying. She is so beaten down by you. She is so sick of your criticism. She needs you to wake up and start supporting her and to start being kinder to her. She's doing her best. And kind of this epiphany that I was relentless in my criticism of myself, even just 18 months ago, even having turned my life around, built this business, got our family out of the $1 million in debt, got the liens off the house, which, they were there 6 years ago, the liens from the $1 million in debt that my husband and I were in because of the restaurant business. Wow. And despite the fact that I've impacted millions of people's lives, despite the fact that I have 3 kids that are okay, they're healthy, they, are facing their stuff, they're doing their thing, they're going to school, despite the fact that I've been, married for 25 years and we still work on it despite the fact that I got a roof over, I look in the mirror and I see a woman that I hated, that wasn't enough, that was doing everything wrong. I was relentlessly focused on what wasn't working.